Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Quet, and today we're going to be tying in everything that I've gone over in my last 4 videos to create a project. And in this project, we have Ant-Man. If you're not familiar with Ant-Man, he's a superhero from the Marvel Universe. His main powers are the ability to grow and shrink. So he can shrink down to the size of an ant, or he can grow into pretty much a giant. And today I'm going to show you how to control those powers using the power of JavaScript. Before I get started today, I do want to say that you can follow along with this code with me and build this yourself. I have this code hosted on my GitHub page. I have not gone over any Git or GitHub things on my page as of yet. So I do have an article here on installing Git if you don't have it on your machine. If you have a Mac, it's very likely that Git is already installed. You may want to do an update or something of that nature, but I have this article from Atlassian, I believe it's pronounced, that shows you how to check to see if Git is installed and how to install it if you don't have it. So I'll be sure to link this inside of the description. All right. And to get started, yeah, we pretty much we have Ant-Man here. We're gonna have him this is his normal size right here. We're gonna be able to shrink him, turn him into ant size instantly. He's gonna grow, he can be a giant size. And that's just gonna pretty much be the point of the video. So we're gonna be using const and let to declare our variables, like I've said in one of my previous videos. We're also gonna be writing a few functions here. We're going to manipulate the DOM, and we're going to have event listener. So we're going to, go to the DOM, and we're going to have an event listener that when these buttons are pressed, actions are taken. So we're just going to take everything that I've gone over and tie it all in. So once you have this project cloned, um, once you get to my GitHub, since that's not in the instructions, for how to install Git, we're gonna go to my GitHub really quickly. You can see this picture of me from 2 years ago. And so if we go here to the Ant-Man repo, if you have not used GitHub before, I will say the basic command here is you'll come to this page that I'm gonna link. You're gonna click this button for clone or download. You're going to want to use HTTPS if you don't have your SSH key already set up. If you have your SSH key set up, then you're ahead. So use HTTPS, copy this link, go to your terminal, and go to where you would like this project to be, and you're going to want to run git clone and paste this URL in. Again, if you're not familiar with Git, you may need to do a little research to get started here. I'll do a video on Git and some basic commands as soon as possible. Just in the in case you have never worked with it before and you're sitting here like, oh, I've never used Git, or I haven't, it's confusing, I've tried it before. I'll hurry up and get a video out for that. But for everybody that's already aware of GitHub and, using Git, here you go. We're ready to start at this point. So yeah, I've already written a lot of code already, or a decent amount of code already. As you can see, we already have the visuals here. We're just missing the functionality. For anybody that's not familiar, I've used HTML and CSS here. HTML is the structure of your web page. CSS is the styling and what makes it look good. And JavaScript is the logic behind it and what makes things work, what makes the page tick, right? So I have my HTML here. It's pretty basic. I have the basic structure, and then I have the logo here, um, which is the Ant-Man up here, and then I have my buttons here that do different. That's gonna make the Ant-Man shrink and grow and stuff like that. And then I have this image of Ant-Man. So not too much going on with the HTML. And then in my assets folder, I have this scripts file. I'm sorry, in the styles folder, inside of the assets folder, I have this center Ant-Man, center the buttons and the logo, turn the background black. So I haven't done too much. But here we are. And the part that we're going to be more concerned about is the scripts tag, which is empty. So inside of our scripts folder, we have scripts.js, and we're going to start building this out here using everything that I've gone over in the last couple of videos. All right, so let's get started on that. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do is we know that this picture of Ant-Man is constantly going to be changing. He's going to be shrinking. He's going to be growing. So we should probably target this image using by going to the DOM. So here I'm going to create a variable called Ant-Man. So const Ant-Man, and remember, as I said, const is pretty much the default that I go to unless the value of the variable is going to change. In this case, it's not. Ant-Man's size is going to change, but he's always going to have the same value. So that might make a little bit more sense in a few minutes. So we know that we have to query the DOM. So we're going to go to document. We're going to use query selector here. And then we know that we have to go to the image, so we have to grab that class. So if we go over here to the HTML, we move that around, we see that Ant-Man has a class name of ant-man.img. So yeah, we're gonna go to the DOM. We're gonna look for a class of Ant-Man image, and that way we have control over the Ant-Man image. So yeah, we're gonna type that out. Let's make sure that we include the dot here, and now we should have control of our Ant-Man image. So the next thing for us to do is let's try writing out a function that will make him get smaller here. So let's start with the ant size. So we're going to make a function called ant size. So we have ant size equals function. So I'm going to make a variable here called smaller. And so with this, we're going to target the button here that turns him to ant size. So that button has a class name of ant. So we want to target that button and have a query selector on that. Well, we're going to have a query selector so we can select it. But then we're going to run an event listener on it that's going to listen for when this button is clicked to make him ant sized. So I have our variable called smaller, query selector, that class name was ant. Okay, cool. So now we're able to target that that button. We have our query selector here. So now we're gonna call smaller here. We're gonna add an event listener. We're gonna wait for that button to be clicked, and once it's clicked, we're gonna run a function. So I don't have any functions written so far, so this is something that I don't think I've gone over in my video on functions. We're gonna write something called an anonymous function. Essentially, an anonymous function is just a function that doesn't have a name. It's a function, it runs, it doesn't have a name. We're gonna, just write a function right here that once the button is clicked, it's still gonna run this function. It's gonna run these set of instructions. It just doesn't have a name. It's fine. It's not a big deal. It doesn't have to have a name in order to run. So we're just gonna to declare an anonymous function. You just write function. You have your parentheses and your curly braces, and then your set of instructions inside of the curly braces. So here we're going to call Ant-Man, which is already declared up here. We're going to say, hey, grab this Ant-Man image here. We're going to run style.height. This is going to change the style of the Ant-Man image here. This is what this style method here is doing, and then the height method here is going to assign a height, a different height to the Ant-Man image. So now we just have to give it a value. We have to say, hey, when this button is clicked, how big is Ant-Man going to be? So I'm going to say 5 view height. So for you guys that are familiar with CSS and sizes and how sizes change, by default most people probably learn and use pixel px when they start out. Then there's other options. There's percentage. There's like I use view height and view width. There's a couple other things out there. Everybody kind of has their preference. I actually am a big fan of view height and view width. It just clicked with me, and it just says, hey, um, whatever whatever the size is that this image is inside of, make it a. It's kind of like percent. So basically, it's looking for the viewport that the person has. So so I don't want to get too deep into this, but the viewport of this window is 100 view height, 100 view width. If you are viewing this on your phone, that screen size is also 100 view height and 100 view width. It's just kind of the viewport, the window that you're working with is how big the screen is. So this is gonna it's consistently gonna take up five. It's gonna be 5 view height. So whether that's, let's say, 100 pixels wide, it's gonna be 5 pixels. Is how big the picture is gonna be. If the screen that I'm using is 1,000 pixels, then it's gonna be 50 pixels. Doing the quick math off the top of my head. So yeah, that it's gonna be always, it's gonna fit always whatever the view window that you're looking at is. So hopefully that made sense. But yeah, this is why I use view height and view width. It just makes sense to me. Um yeah, so essentially what we've written here is a function that is going to grab the ant button, the ant size button that we have here. It's going to look for that button, and it attaches an event listener that listens for that button to be clicked. And then once that button is clicked, it's going to change the height of Ant-Man to 5 view height. So we have all of that saved. If you look here, this isn't going to work because I haven't refreshed the page. I also haven't called the function yet. But we look at our page here, we have Ant-Man. If we click on any of these buttons, they don't do anything at all, which is how it's supposed to be. We have Ant-Man here. He has his size. I believe if you look at the CSS here, he is by default 70 view height. So now we're going to shrink him down to 5 view height once the button is clicked. So I'm going to run a function here, ant size. We're going to save that. We're going to refresh the page so that it works now. And now, like I said, we're going to target this button. Once this button is clicked, Ant-Man is going to become 5 view height. So let's click it, and there we go. He's shrunk. He's super small now. He's no longer 70. He's no longer taking up 70% of the page. Hopefully that's not confusing for people that use percentages, but that is exactly how I think of it. So this page is 100% of the size. He's now taking up 5% of the size of the page. So he shrunk. Here he is. And now let's write more code to allow him to not be shrunk forever. So the next thing I'm going to target, I'm just going to go from left to right. We have ant size, shrink, normal, grow, and giant size. So I'm going to go to shrink next. So this code is going to be very similar to the code that we wrote for ant size. We're just going to make a shrink size variable, function, sorry. We're going to declare a variable called small. We're going to target that button. I believe it was shrink. Yep, has a class name of shrink. So now we're going to target small. I'm going to add the event listener. Click. Up. We have a function here, and now that Ant-Man image that we already have the variable for it. We're going to give it a new style height. And for this one, let's just go with about 30 view height. I did something, oh, I didn't wrap it in quotes. Right, and let's call it here. Let's save that. And if we go and refresh our page here, Ant-Man is his normal size. tell him ant size. And now we're gonna, he's technically gonna grow. We're just gonna shrink him down to, we're gonna turn him to the size where he just shrinks, right? So here we go. We have him. He's a little bit bigger than ant size, but he's not his normal size. He's definitely shrunken some. So here we go. We have this so far. So let's go back to our code and go back to his normal size, which is 70 view height. So we're just gonna write you know, normal size function. We're just gonna do this whole song and dance again. And by all means, if you're enjoying this video and this code and you're seeing everything come together, and this is your first time kind of working on something like this, and you kind of want to pause it and skip ahead and say, hey, you know what, I'm going to try to write a function to make him a normal size and, you know, make him grow or make him a giant size and try it on your own and then come back and see if it works. Go ahead and do that. Also, if somehow you get stuck or there's some type of issue you're having, I do have this solution on the GitHub page. So once you clone this down, you're gonna want to work inside of the what's the wording, the starter. Yeah, I have a starter directory and a completed directory. You can just go inside the starter directory to start doing this code. If for some reason something's not working, just go into the completed section and start coding. You can look at the code and make comparisons and see what didn't really work out for you. So we have the function. Let's call this normal. All right, so we're gonna target this, add our event listener, listen for the click. And I'm also doing this kind of the long way. After I finish writing this function, I'm just gonna kind of do some copying and pasting and you know, change wording up to save time. However, I do encourage you, if you know you're working on this, to maybe type it all out instead of doing copying and pasting. For me, typing things over and over, writing variables, writing functions, doing it over and over repetitively really helped it sink in and help me learn. So, you know, some people can just say, hey, I wrote it one time, I'm just going to copy and paste it 5 times and change words here and there, and they're good to go. For me, it was writing it over and over again that really helped it sink in. So I definitely encourage you to do that. Um, so yeah, we have Ant-Man style height. And like I said, he was 70 view height. So we're going to do that. And then we're just going to call this function, save it, restart our page here. And so he can shrink, he can go to ant size, and now he's back to his normal size. So we're pretty much 3/5 done writing the logic for this code. We have 2 more functions that we have to make, and we're pretty much done. Yeah, so the next thing, like I said, we're just gonna kind of copy and paste here. So this video isn't super long. We're gonna change normal here. And if you're using Visual Code Studio, good time for a good trick. I have a lot of time-saving tricks that I like to run. You may have seen me using some of these shortcuts in other videos. Here, you can select this word normal. If you're on a Mac, it's going to be Command plus D at the same time. It's going to grab the next normal. You can do this 2 more times to grab every instance of normal here and update them all at the same time. So here I want to change normal to giant. I'm sorry, to grow. So we're going to use grow here. And now we just have to say what height we want him to be when it grows. Let's just say 100 view height. He's going to take up a whole page at this point. And then we're going to just say grow size. So here we go, and that this saves a lot of time, and I love that trick, being able to say, oh, you know, I have this function is going to be really similar. Let me just copy and paste it, change a few words at the same time, and keep it pushing. So now if we go back to our code here, you should always test your code. I haven't really mentioned that in this video, but I've been doing it. Write some code, write a little bit of code, test it, make sure it works, and then write the rest of your code. It would be horrible if we wrote all of this code and never tested it and none of it worked, and it would just like, oh, now I have to fix it, now I have to see what the bugs at. I don't know what's going on here. Then you're just stuck. If you write a little bit of code at a time, if it doesn't work, you can easily fix it. You know where to fix it. And if it works, you're good to go. And then you just write a little bit more and just test it. Always actively test your code as you're going. Um, yeah, so we refresh here. We see that he can shrink. He can go to ant size. He's normal. All of that works. We click grow, and here he is. He's larger than his normal size. Normal size, we see his feet at the bottom. Grow size, he gets bigger, and like I said, it takes up 100% of the screen at this point. He pretty much takes up all of the screen. There's a couple pixels he doesn't take up, but that's pretty much made up by like a invisible box around him. But yeah, so he's taking up the whole screen now at this point. So now let's work to make him giant size, even bigger. He's taking up more than the entire screen now, more than 100% of the screen. So like I showed in the last step, we're actually going to take all of this. Another tip that I'll give you is you can use, I believe it's Alt Shift, um, yeah, Alt Shift and down. Sorry, that was questionable because I use a external keyboard, a mechanical keyboard, and because of that, my buttons are a little weird because it's made for a PC. So yeah, so if you use those buttons, Alt Shift down, it'll copy exactly what you have. And it's you're not copying and pasting. You can move lines around if you use Alt up, down, all of that kind of stuff. Maybe I'll do a video if you are interested in uh, shortcuts for Visual Studio Code because it just saves you a lot of time. And typing, and who doesn't want to save time typing? So yeah, we're just gonna select. We're gonna use Command D. We're gonna put in giant here, and then we're just gonna put 150 pixels here, right? Save it. Come over here and refresh. Let's see what giant size looks like. And here he is. He's huge now, right? He doesn't even fit on a whole screen. You have to keep scrolling to see all of him. And then yeah, now he can go back to normal size, ant size. He just can go around and shrink and grow just like he does in the movies and the comics and all of that. So this is pretty much everything. Um, you can make any changes or adjustments to this project if you want. You can, if you don't like the sizes he is, let's say you want him to be 200 pixels, giant isn't big enough for you, or even 2000, which might just be a lot. But if you want him to be 200, 2 pages essentially when he's giant size, there you go. If you want him to be even smaller when he's ant sized, you can do whatever you want. If you want to add more buttons, maybe make him, grow, have maybe in between, go ahead and do that. Just have fun. The CSS styling is here if you want to experiment with that and make changes, maybe have a different background. Um, Maybe you don't like the color of these buttons, you don't like their red tint that they have, you want it to be another color, maybe you want it to match his outfit more. Whatever you want. Have fun. If you're learning and this is kind of teaching you, just go ahead and take a look at this code and kind of reverse engineer it. Just look and see, oh, I'm targeting the side buttons, and I'm making these changes here. What does 2VH auto do? If you're familiar with margin, then you can put like 0 auto to center something. Um, so yeah, just kind of experiment. See what I have here. If something doesn't make sense, you can always ask me. You can always just Google it and see like what your options are. Why margin works this way. What exactly does margin do? What does border radius do? I have border radiuses on all the buttons. If you don't know what it is, you can go ahead and look it up. If you have questions, you can ask me in the comment section. You can always tweet me at QuetCodesFire. And as always, I wouldn't be doing my job right if I didn't ask you to subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video, especially if you went through this project. Also, like this video if you enjoyed yourself. And yeah, if you're new to coding, this is a good small project to well, I shouldn't say small, but it's a good project to add to your portfolio, just so that you're learning, you're working on something, and it's fun. You know, it's Ant-Man. It's superheroes. Who doesn't like superheroes? And if you have anything extra you want to add to the project, go for it. You know, have fun. So yeah, once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.